We're going to go ahead and get started. There is a quorum present. I want to make note of the fact that we do have one member, Representative Jones, attending remotely today. We will start then with the top. Since there's a quorum present, we need to approve the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from March 10th? Thank you, Chair Nash. Are there any concerns about or questions about the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? And the ayes have it. The minutes for March 10th of 2026 are in fact approved. We're going to go ahead and proceed with House File 3455. We have Chair Klevorn at the testifier table up for consideration. So we're going to move this before the body or before the committee and have it re-referred to the general register.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chair Klevorn and I spoke, and the chairs, both chairs, I believe, of Ways and Means would like this to come before Ways and Means for consideration, and we do have an agreement to do that with Chair Klevorn.
Thank
I will
you.
officially make the referral to Ways and Means, and I would like my co-chair to
And I would like to thank Chair Nash for his support of the bill and for his continued work in moving it through Ways and Means.
All right, thank you. Then we are going to change that motion to move that to Ways and Means. And I believe there is an A1, is that right?
That is correct. There is an A1 amendment that you will see that directs the Commissioner of Administration to absorb any cost incurred by the Commissioner to modify or replace signage as necessary to conform with Section 1.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions to the A1? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the A1. All those in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And the ayes have it. The A1 is now attached to the bill, and it is in the shape you would like it. Chair Klevorn, if you'd like to speak to the bill.
Thank you. To House File 3455 as amended, I want to begin with that this is a very personal bill, but more importantly, Melissa Hortman was my friend. But today is not about Melissa Hortman as my friend. Today is about Melissa Hortman as a leader in our state and as someone who personified diplomacy and statesmanship. So the words that I'm going to be using today are not my own. The bill was brought to us by the community, and the bill was brought to us by all of the staff who work in the Capitol complex. So I would just like to begin with, these are not my words, but the words of the people. Melissa Hortman was an institutionalist. Melissa cared deeply about preserving the institution of the House as a legislative body. She cared about following the rules and about respecting legislators for the important work they were elected to do. Melissa fought as a leader to bring back the wins of both caucuses and for the entire body. Speaker Emerita Hortman knew that every legislator was there to represent their district, and they needed to bring home wins for their district. As a policymaker, Speaker Emerita Hortman brought passion to the work. It was her passion to create really good policy. She loved nothing more than passing legislation into law that made Minnesota a better place for the people of Minnesota, especially when that work was done in a bipartisan manner. Speaker Emerita Hortman wanted respect in the workplace. Melissa fought hard to improve the culture of the House for everyone who works here, members, staff, and lobbyists. I said to someone this morning, I didn't cry while eulogizing my mother. I thought I could get through this. Thank you. Forgive me. Okay. She wanted everyone to work in a respectful place. Beautification of the Capitol. Along with the lines of creating a respectful workplace, Melissa felt strongly that the Capitol complex was a treasure for the entire state. And the Capitol complex should be invested in so that the people would feel it to be a welcoming place to be enjoyed. It was a place of democracy. It is the people's house. She loved the Capitol building, but also the entire grounds. She wanted them maintained so that people could come and be at the Capitol's front yard. She wanted the complex to be so inviting that people would travel here as a destination, and it was more than a fourth grade field trip. As my mentor and as the person I looked up to for how good policy is developed, I hope that we will all think about the legacy that Melissa brought to her work. There is in your packet today a petition that was signed by over 2,100 people around the state, Republicans and Democrats and independents, in support of this bill to name the state office building the Melissa Hortman State Office Building. And today we do have a testifier who brought that petition to life. And I would ask that we move to that testifier, please.
Thank you, Chair Klevorn. I think we would all agree that while we may have our differences on policy, I think we can establish that folks across this Capitol who've worked with Speaker Emerita Hortman had great respect and trust in her leadership. And so with that, I want to call up our first testifier, Jody Anderson Walhopter. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. And if you want to go ahead and have a seat, state your name for the record, and then go ahead and proceed with your testimony.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So my name is Jody Anderson Wilhapter, and good morning, committee members. I am a Brooklyn Park resident and a forever proud constituent of Melissa Hortman. I may look like one person, but I actually represent 2,235 people who have signed on to the change.org petition my husband and I started in July as a grassroots effort to demonstrate public support for renaming the state office building in Melissa Hortman's honor. I know you have copies of the petition, and it is also posted on the House State Gov webpage. And just a note, there has been an increase in the number of signers because people are signing pretty much every day when they find out about it. This petition represents 38 states, Washington, D.C., and 6 other countries, but most of all, it represents Melissa's wide-ranging impact. Indeed, this petition illustrates the power of one person to transform countless lives. And conversely, each name in this petition represents countless private grieving moments and the unseen suffering across our state and beyond since June 14th. I cannot tell you the reasons compelling each person to sign, but I urge you to read each name. For each name is its own kind of bell, intoning a solemn call for remembrance. This is not about politics. This is about common humanity and the dignity of honoring our own. Melissa grew up in Minnesota, came home to Minnesota after college, raised her family here, and served as a stellar citizen and lawmaker for over 20 years. Adding Melissa's name to the office building where the work for the people will continue, work to which Melissa so tirelessly devoted her life, would be a fitting living memorial to the bipartisan spirit she exemplified even in her final vote. Additionally, in a country where fewer than 8% of public memorials are dedicated to women, Minnesota has an opportunity to stand up for an important female role model. Please understand, the people of Minnesota expect a permanent dedication site to Melissa Hortman. Many are surprised to find out there is even a need to petition lawmakers for tributes. Please also understand, doing nothing adds more injury to so many people who loved Melissa, Mark, and Gilbert. And I'm so happy to hear that this is being put forward today out of committee. Thank you. So we thank you for supporting HF 3455. As Shakespeare might have written, what's in a name, but our answer is everything. Thank you.
Thank you to the testifier. Are there any other testifiers in the audience wishing to come forward? Seeing none, we'll move to member discussion. Is there any discussion to the bill? Chair Nash.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Chair Klevorn. As you know, Melissa was my friend too. We may have agreed on maybe 11 or 12 things, but she was an institutionalist, and we had some fun together. I'm not sure that everybody, not everybody was here when we did it, but we did actually an amendment to declare the legislature a unicameral and do away with the Senate. No offense. But I had offered the amendment during a time that everything was a little bit tense, and I pulled it back because I thought, well, maybe we'll just not do this. And Speaker Hortman called me up to the rostrum, and she used some words that I can't use here in committee, but she says, you will do that amendment. And then she said, bring me the copy of the amendment, and she signed on. And for those that do remember, it was the chief clerk introducing it. So Hortman and Nash introduced the following amendment. And she did have a very good knack of knowing when to enter levity into the situation and when to be respectful to the situation. So we will be supporting moving this forward to Ways and Means. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair Nash. Before we head to a voice vote, I just wanted to say, as a point of personal privilege, Melissa meant a great deal to me, too. Mm-hmm. I often feel her standing over my shoulder, even today. I think we knew her as an honest and fair dealer. And more importantly, no matter what you may have thought of her politics, she kept her word. She lifted people up. But moreover, she loved this institution. She loved the idea of the People's House being a place for people across our state to be able to come and share ideas and viewpoints and maybe even hash it out if we needed to. But she believed at the end of the day we needed to take off our jerseys and work together to do the people's work. And I believe this is a fitting tribute. And with that, we are going to go to a voice vote.
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry,
I
Madam
believe
Chair.
that Representative Kraft would like to say something.
My
as well.
apologies. Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and sorry to come in late. It's hard to talk about this. Chair Klevorn, you and I shared a pretty special moment around Speaker Emerita Hortman. You know, what, I don't know a better way, what profound way to honor her than to attach her name to the place where we do the work. Mm-hmm. That feels very appropriate to me. So thank you all for that we're going to voice vote this on, and I look forward to this coming to the floor and happening. Thank you.
And then, Madam Chair, I just have a few closing remarks.
Chair Klevorn, to your closing remarks.
Thank you. I want to thank the membership of this committee for agreeing to move this bill on to Ways and Means. More importantly, I'd like to thank each Minnesotan who came to the Capitol to honor Melissa and her memory. I'd like to thank those who have reached out to me in support of this legislation. I'd like to thank Speaker Melissa Hortman for making the class of 2019 an awesome class of legislators, for mentoring us, including Leader Damon at that time. She came in the class of 2019. And I think she said it best when she said in an NPR article that we all watched Melissa. We looked to see how she treated other people. We looked to her to see how we work across the aisle to get good work done. And she would say to us, take the personality out of the conversation. Focus on the problem to be solved. She told us to read Who Moved My Cheese? She told us to read Getting to Yes. And I thank her tremendously for making me the legislator that I am. And I want to close with the words of another Minnesotan. Again, these are not my words. I believe Melissa is the beacon for the beliefs here in Minnesota. To care for the people around you. To see the lives of those who are different from you. To cooperate with those who don't agree with you. And to practice simple kindness. With that, members, I thank you for your anticipated yes vote, and I look forward as we work together to move this bill to the General Register and to vote it into law. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. I want to remind people to silence their phones and just say thank you. With no other discussion, we're going to go to a vote to move this bill to Ways and Means with the agreement of the chairs. All those in
As
favor.
amended, the bill
As amended, to Ways and Means. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The bill is moved to Ways and Means. Chair Klevorn.
The next bill is a little
One more.
easier.
All right, we have before us House File 3936 up for consideration. Chair Klevorn, would you like to move your bill? And I believe its intended path is Ways and Means.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. House File 3936 is an appropriation, a one-time appropriation from the general fund to the Commissioner of Administration in support of public television in Greater Minnesota. These funds would support Pioneer PBS in Granite Falls, Lakeland PBS in Bemidji, Brainerd, KSMQ in Austin and Rochester, which also serves rural eastern Minnesota, PBS North, which is in the Duluth Superior region, and then Prairie Public, which is in the Fargo, Grand Forks, Crookston, Dickinson, and Williston area of our state. As you can see, none of these stations are in the metro area, but what is important is that these stations are the #1 educational media channel for children in Greater Minnesota. They serve provide high-quality nonfiction, nature, news, and of course, my very favorite, Daniel Tiger. As a grandmother, This bill is important, I think, to every grandparent across greater Minnesota so that they can have high-quality distraction for their children when they need a break. But more importantly, it's a treasure and a gem that we have had in our state for decades. And I would like to see the continuation of PBS as a high-quality, trusted channel for our families in greater Minnesota. And with that, we have testifiers to speak to the bill.
And Chair Klevorn, do we have an A1?
Yes, we do have an A1. Thank you very much
Would you
for
like
bringing
to
that
move the
forward.
A1?
Yes. The A1 changes the date of the appropriation and aligns the bill with the Senate. So it changes the year from 2027 to 2026. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any discussion to the A1? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it. The A1 is amended to House File 3936. And with that, we do have some testifiers. And hold on. Bill Struzinski. Mr. Struzinski, if you would like to go ahead and announce yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Bill Struzinski. I work with Libby Law Office, and I've represented public television in Minnesota for 42 years. I'm honored to be here, and thank you for having this hearing this morning, Madam Chair and Mr. Nash. I've testified in front of this committee over 21 times on budgets on behalf of public television. I've testified in front of this committee several times as well when you gave us $15 million to do a digital transition plan when we converted from analog signals to digital signals as mandated by the federal government. I've testified in front of this committee when you gave us $15 million recently, a few years ago, to help us rebuild our infrastructure, to update our towers and transmitters. So you've been a loyal partner, and the taxpayers of Minnesota have been a loyal partner to public television since the 60s, actually. And I so appreciate it, and I appreciate my time with you today. I've never testified before you saying we're under threat. We're really concerned about our future and our viability. We lost $9 million from the federal government in the elimination of funding last fall. We got a 30-day notice that the money is going to be gone, effective October 1st. It impacted our stations greatly, some of them 30 and 40% of their budget. But we're not asking, to put that in perspective, last biennium, this committee awarded us about $4.5 million in state grants for public television over biennium. One leg of our three-legged stool, the federal government and our communities, the state government, one leg took $9 million away in 1 year. That's kind of ongoing money we had. So it's kind of, we're very concerned about our future and appreciate this opportunity to be here with you today. So I just want to say that this money is not a replacement fund. We're not asking you to replace and backfill the money we lost from the federal government. We're going to try and deal with that, but we can't deal with that overnight. We need an opportunity for this transition plan to work. So these funds will be allocated to each one of these stations so they can quit spending some of the reserves, because some of them are going to run out of reserves shortly, I mean, within the next year. This helps us develop a plan to transition into where we're going to be at least a year from now. We can't do that overnight. We need some help and some time to work through all these issues so we can talk about sharing costs and what have you. So we've curtailed activities. We laid off people, done all kinds of things, and Sherry Lemke, our CEO and president of Pioneer Public Television, will take you through that at all. I just want to thank you for being a loyal partner to public television over all these years. We want to continue to do a good job in your communities and for yourself. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sherry Lemke.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Struzinski. And then we have up Ms. Sherry Lamke, the president and general manager of the Pioneer PBS station. If you'd like to go ahead and proceed with your testimony.
Good morning, Chairman Nash, Chairman Klevorn, and members of the committee. My name is Sherry Lamke. I serve as the president and general manager of Pioneer PBS in Granite Falls. We're the only television station broadcasting in much of western Minnesota. Something I'm well aware of, as I've been visited, called, and stopped at the gas station recently by people who don't have cable, who don't have satellite TV, who are desperate for us to continue to be the window to the world for them. To speak of public television is to speak of the Agora, the common ground where Minnesotans gather to learn, witness, and understand one another. I'm here today representing our stations across Greater Minnesota, not merely to request an appropriation, but to advocate for the preservation of our shared cultural heritage. Last fall, the sudden federal rescission of funding struck a devastating blow to our foundation. For Pioneer PBS, this wasn't merely a budgetary trim. This was a seismic shift that erased 30% of our operating funds. Those funds bring the world to our neighbors' living rooms, and they lift the voices of that region to the world. Aristotle famously observed that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. He understood that for a collective body to thrive, every part must be resilient. When the civic infrastructure of Greater Minnesota is compromised, the strength of the entire state is diminished. We are at a historical crossroads. We've already made painful sacrifices through severe staff reductions. We lost 30% of our funding. We lost 30% of our staff. We shuttered programs that have been fan favorites for years, and we're drawing on final reserves. But a bridge cannot be built while the builders are struggling just to stay afloat. The $350,000 requested for Pioneer PBS and the $1,925,000 for our Greater Minnesota Coalition represents a transitional bridge. This investment allows us to preserve local identity. We tell the stories of rural Minnesotans that no national network is ever going to tell. These requested funds will assist in strategically evolving. We are re-engineering our business models to integrate shared services, ensuring we emerge as a leaner, more agile organization. And it will allow for maintaining service. Our children's education and our emergency messaging cannot pause while we reinvent the gears of our operation. Please know we are here for the long haul. We possess the will to innovate, but we lack the immediate capital to complete this transformation without collapsing under the weight of the federal withdrawal. An investment in HF 3936 affirms that the citizens of Greater Minnesota deserve both a window to the world and a mirror to their own lives. Please let us not be the generation that allowed the lights of public discourse to go dark, but rather the one that built the bridge to keep them shining for decades to come. Thank you for consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Lemke. And thank you to both of the testifiers for coming all this way. We certainly appreciate you coming here today. Is there any discussion? Representative Kosnick.
Thank you, Chair Klevorn. In the bill, I don't see a fiscal note, but it's kind of obvious in the bill. But generally, we require fiscal notes. So it's 1.925 million, right?
Yes, it is.
In our structural spending deficit, what is being offset for to compensate for this new spending or additional spending?
Thank you, Chair Kosnick, and I appreciate your question. And we don't usually have fiscal notes when the your chair, you know this, when there isn't exact appropriation designated. So we don't usually do a fiscal note when we designate the exact number. We don't make people go around and do that extra work and duplicate costs. The other thing that you know as a chair is that this year, because we are facing a structural deficit, what we are doing is we will have a zero target for this committee, and the bills will go to Ways and Means, and there will be a negotiation at a very high level as to which things we will and will not fund, right? So what I can tell you about this bill is this is a bill about making sure, as we just heard from the testimony, that the people of Greater Minnesota, you will not be impacted. Your community will continue to have their PBS station, as will mine. This is not a Metro-centric thing. This is the very type of work that Melissa Hortman taught us to do. As chair, when she asked me to be the chair of this committee, she said, you have to take off a partisan hat and you have to work for the greater good. This is a bipartisan bill that serves people who are not my constituents. I asked for Republican leadership on this bill, and it was denied to me. So I said, this is a bill that is for the greater good of Minnesotans. I will carry this bill for the children of Minnesota. I will make sure that they have, as we just heard, this beautiful, beautiful line, a window to the world and a mirror of our community. That is so important for people to be able to see their own community reflected back in that local identity. To me, I am hopeful that leadership on both sides of the aisle will understand the importance of this bill for people who don't have satellite, who don't have cable, to have a tornado warning in their community. This is the heartbeat of a community. And as we have heard Chair Nash talk about in the importance of PBS to children who don't feel they have a friend anywhere. This is money well spent on socialization for the elderly, for mental health for children, and for people to be able to feel an identity and connected to community. So if you don't want to vote for it, please vote no. But for me, I will be voting yes for the people of Greater Minnesota.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not questioning the intent or purpose of the dollars. As chairs and members of the Finance Committee on Ways and Means, there is a general understanding that any new spending is offset with other spending because of the overspending the state has done. So it's not a question of the underlying bill. I'm talking about the fiscal conservative or fiscal constraint, and that isn't and shouldn't be a partisan issue. From higher above, the message has been, even in the governor's budget presentation, that any new spending is offset. If there was an offset in this spending, we would have a fiscal note that would say that, because you would identify spending reductions in other areas.
Madam
So,
Chair.
excuse me, ma'am,
Oh, no, it's fine. I just want to let her know that I want to respond when you're finished.
while I'm
Please
speaking.
go right ahead, please.
Thank you. So that is the point that I make. It's not about the underlying bill, but we do have a responsibility, even if we aren't leadership, so to say, at the top level. We are chairs, we are members of the legislature, we are all leaders and have a responsibility on how we spend money. This is how we got in the problems in the first place. So to the testifiers, I'm not questioning the program that you're advocating for, but I am advocating for fiscal responsibility for the taxpayers of Minnesota. And we see this a little bit too often. And so I just bring up the point. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Koznick. I know we are all well aware that we need to make sure that we are fiscally responsible. Chair Klevorn, did you have a comment?
Yes, I do have a comment, and I believe that the statement that was just made might be leadership conversation on the Republican side of the aisle. That is not the conversation that I have on my side of the aisle. As chair of this committee, I have always been empowered to send forward the bills that I believe are most important to the state of Minnesota. I exercise my duty and responsibility and my election certificate as I see best. I do not take mandates from other people as to what I do and do not do in this committee. And for me, this is money well spent. The discussion on spending happens in Ways and Means at the end of the day, a committee of which I am a member, and I handle that responsibility with equal measure. I move forward without fear or favor. This is a great bill that needs to leave our committee and our leadership if they want to make sure that people of Greater Minnesota are served equally as the people in the metro. Then I believe in Ways and Means we will have that discussion, and we will debate whether or not these dollars are worthy of our expenditure. But in my mind, in my committee, under my chairmanship, I believe that this is a bill with a clear one-time appropriation that needs to move out of our committee. And I ask members to support it.
Thank you, Chair Klevorn. On the next on the list, we have Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chair Klevorn, for bringing this. I agree with everything you said about the importance of it. I want to add, I signed on as a co-author,
Thank you.
and I want to highlight one of the key reasons why I did that. We have seen across Minnesota, really across the country, a decrease in the amount of media outlets in places that are not in metro areas. And I think that is really concerning just for the health of our democracy. And so even though this is not in my district area, I think that preserving local voices, whatever they are, whatever they want to talk about, is really important. And so I think this money is well spent, and I appreciate you bringing the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Kraft. I do want to make just one additional quick note. We keep hearing some chiming from a phone that I think is distracting members. If you're in the audience and you have a phone that is not on silent, I would ask that you please do so. Next, we do have Representative Luger-Nikolai on the list.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Chair Klevorn, for bringing this bill forward. I think it's really critical. It really resonated, the comment that you made about growing up or not having cable, because that was me when I was a kid. We did not have cable. We watched a critical mass of public television, and I could actually probably still recite the programming lineup. And as a parent who had digital options for my kids, we also watched a lot of Wildcrats, and so I know the life cycle of an earthworm now and can recite that as well. These allocations would be a steal at twice the price. These are really, it's critical programming, especially in a time of media consolidation. And both public television and radio stations in our communities, either public or private, are lean. They run very lean. They are not operating on giant margins, and these are not unreasonable asks. So I hope that there can be support for these bills.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, I have Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I live in the area served by Pioneer Public Television, and I fully support the work that they do. It's an excellent source of a lot of different things for those of us in western Minnesota. I also do share concerns about the spending, and I think that's going to be the purview of the Ways and Means Committee. But again, for the work that you do, the service you provide to residents in our area, I support your work and thank you for the bill.
Thank you for that. Chair Nash.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and we'll echo a lot of the fiscal comments that have been made. We're going to figure this out in Ways and Means, but obviously as somebody who has been on record in the past of being a big fan of Mr. Rogers in my childhood, I think it's a conversation that we should have there, and what Representative Anderson just said was exactly where I was headed. We'll figure this out, and the impact made on my life personally has been big, and I will go to Ways and Means and be a participant there, and we'll figure it out. And maybe it doesn't happen, maybe it does. That's where we're going to figure out the dollars and cents is in Ways and Means. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair Nash. I think we all agree that public television is a public treasure. It is, in many cases, the great equalizer across our entire state. And I will say this, I would be happy to speak with you offline and happy to make a contribution as well, because I believe that folks across greater Minnesota need access to those resources as well. With that, Chair Klevorn, do you have any closing comments on your bill before we go to a vote?
I would like for
As amended.
Thank you. This is a bipartisan bill. And when we bring good legislation forward, we have support from across the state. And the bill is not intended to be a spending bill to drive our deficit. That is not what it's about. It is unfortunate that we have had Greater Minnesota Congress individuals who cut the funding at the federal level and are now causing our state to pick up this expense. But to Chair Nash's comments, and I couldn't agree with him more, our PBS stations all across the state touch, change, challenge lives. And they are a treasure. They have been in our state for more than 60 years, and I would encourage everyone to please vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Klevorn. And with that, we're going to go to a vote on House File 3936 as amended. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. The bill is moved on to Ways and Means as amended. Thank you, Chair Klevorn, for your time, and we're going to do a brief swap here.
Representative Bahner, as you get ready, I will move the bill to be before the committee. I will move House File 3860 be re-referred to the General Register. And when you're ready, if you will begin your testimony on the bill.
Thank you, Chair Klevorn. You know, I will say this bill is one of those interesting ones that is extremely important, that often makes many of our friends glaze over their eyes when we start talking about cybersecurity, with the exception of probably Chair Nash and I. But I always say that cybersecurity is national security on a digital level. And it has significant importance to our state and to the safe functioning of our assets and protecting the identities of folks within our state who do not often have a choice to use public services. With that, I will give a brief amount of background and then to the bill. Essentially, the Cybersecurity Commission was devised several years ago. The commission is provided with oversight for the state cybersecurity measures. The commission will review policies and practices of the state agencies with regard to cybersecurity and recommend changes on policy to adequately protect the state from cybersecurity threats. The commission can also help make recommendations and draft legislation to support the strength of the state's cybersecurity infrastructure. It is composed of 4 senators and 4 members of the House, equally divided and appointed by the leaders of those bodies. And the chairmanship switches from one body to the next from time to time. This bill, in the time that we have had this bill, or this commission, excuse me, we put forth some pretty incredible legislation. And we've worked hand in hand with our friends on the other side of the aisle. And I want to say a great thank you right here to Chair Nash, because we are leading the nation in setting forth, passing a bill that designates IT infrastructure as critical infrastructure in the event of a cyber attack. We called upon that legislation just this last fall when the city of St. Paul was impacted by a cyber attack. And I want to say, I don't think that bill could have happened without the joint leadership of Chair Nash and our friends in the Senate as well as in the House. This is critical legislation that leads the nation. And we are doing that work because we work together and we have this commission to discuss these important topics of the day. It also provides a forum to do closed-door sessions when necessary, when there may be topics that are sensitive around the state cybersecurity posture that should not be discussed in an open forum, because we certainly do not want to tip our hand to the bad actors. And with that, I do have one testifier with me today, but I want to just, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention what the bill does. I think it should be fairly obvious, but it essentially moves out the sunset date for this commission. As you know, we frequently set sunset dates to make sure that we're evaluating whether or not commissions still provide value. We can certainly move them out if they do, but we also want to make sure that we're reevaluating them as we go. And that's essentially what this bill does. With that, I do have one testifier today, and I will turn it over.
Thank you, Mr. Hirsch, and welcome to the committee. When you are ready, if you'll please state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Klevorn, Chair Nash, members of the committee. My name is Brandon Hirsch. I serve as Minutes Director of Government Relations, and thank you for the opportunity to testify today in support of House File 3860 that extends the Legislative Cyber Commission. Committee members, the Cybersecurity Commission represents exactly the kind of strong bipartisan and bicameral collaboration between policymakers and subject matter experts that Minnesotans need to continue. You have in your packets a letter from our Chief Information Security Officer, so I won't repeat all of those points, but I do want to underscore that the Legislative Cybersecurity Commission was an early recommendation of the Blue Ribbon Council on IT, now known as the Technology Advisory Council, yet another strong example of collaboration. And the commission has proven to be everything that was envisioned and more, as Representative Bahner highlighted. The Cybersecurity Commission, along with the support of Co-Chair Nash and Vice Chair Bahner and others, Minute, along with our public entity counterparts in cities and counties, we've been able to examine some of the most complex cybersecurity challenges impacting Minnesotans. And this work has really helped strengthen our understanding of emerging threats and has supported the development of innovative policy, strategic and operational solutions, which many of those Representative Bahner highlighted. We wholeheartedly support the extension of the Cybersecurity Commission, and thank you for your consideration of the bill. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Is anyone else from the public who would like to testify on this bill? Seeing none, I'll bring it to member discussion. Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question on procedure here. You know, extending these sunsets is a fairly common thing we do, but usually we wait until a little bit closer to the expiration date. This doesn't expire for nearly 3 years. Why do it this far ahead of time?
Representative Bahner.
Thank you, Chair Klevorn, and thank you, Representative Anderson. You know, I will tell you, one of the good parts about being on a cybersecurity commission is that you are tasked with folks who often work in places and spaces like project management, and we are very proactive. We already are very well aware of this, and we do not want it to get bandied about. It's just simply too important to have these conversations on cybersecurity, and it is one of those rare spaces where we generally have wide bipartisan agreement on the importance of cybersecurity. And so we are being proactive in making sure that we get our ducks in a row early, because we often know that sometimes things in the legislature get away from us, and we certainly don't want anything to slip through the cracks.
Thank you. Any other member discussion? Chair Nash.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support this. You know, one of the other things about extending it proactively is that we have people from public companies that will actually bring their expertise to bear for us, and they like to be able to plan their attendance around that. So somebody may be tasked from one of the local corporations that comes to bring their voice, and they'll be tasked with a longer block of time just so they can put that into their life. But we've done a lot of good work with this, and it's something that, you know, we sometimes have a lot of commissions when we talk about most of them here, but this is one that has actually benefited the state and benefited our local cities and others, so I support it.
Closing comments, Representative Bahner.
Just simply, you know, I think I've said most of what needs to be said. This really is national security on a digital level. The significance of this in the world in which we live, in which we continue to be more evolving into a technological society and on the precipice of an AI revolution, this is really critical work. And the folks who sit on the commission and the partners, public and private, and agencies that bring to bear their expertise on this matter are significantly invested in the safety and security of our state and each and every citizen. And so with that, I would urge your support for this measure.
Thank you, and I'll just say thank you so much, both for you and for Chair Nash for your work in this and for Minute. The savings that have resulted from the work that you do are tremendous. So I just want to thank you, and I encourage our side to vote yes as well. And with that, members, I renew the motion for House File 3860 to be re-referred to the General Register. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion prevails, and House File 3860 is re-referred to the General Register. Next, we move on to House File 3656, Representative Luger-Nikolai. And we will be talking about the responsibilities of the Attorney General in civil law enforcement. Would you like to move the bill, House File 3656, to be re-referred to judiciary?
Yes, Madam Chair, that'd be super.
All right, so moved. If you would please just discuss the bill before us. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Presently, the Attorney General's office handles litigation for a number of different clients. Oftentimes, the AG is handling litigation on behalf of an agency, either enforcing or helping them to enforce laws they enforce, sometimes in the capacity of defending them if they are a defendant. However, the AG also does critical work on behalf of the people of Minnesota, enforcing laws that protect us. And since 2023, the AG's office has participated in a 42-state bipartisan spread of litigation against Meta, which is the parent company of Facebook, for violations of, among many other things, Minnesota's deceptive trade practices law. These claims arose after Meta claimed publicly and in congressional testimony that their services were right as rain and not unsafe for anybody, but in fact, a whistleblower revealed that those claims were false and that in fact their product is bad for children, and that they absolutely knew it at the time that they made those public statements. As a parent, I am grateful that the AG's office is willing to make the internet safer for my children and for others' children. However, as is often the case in litigation, Meta as a defendant is not taking things laying down, and they are engaging what we often refer to in my practice as discovery abuse, which is to say blanketing various parties with discovery requests, meaning requests for information that are not relevant to the litigation at hand. Because in our state, agencies are deemed essentially one and the same with the AG's office, the agencies have received tons of these discovery requests, and they have been treated as presumptively regular or something that they should be responding to without really any additional consideration. And so they're far-reaching, time-consuming to fulfill, not relevant to the litigation, but because the agencies are treated like parties, it's hard to get out of it. As a result, they've spent countless hours producing hundreds of thousands of documents that really don't help anybody, including Meta, and it detracts from the work that they actually have to do to serve us and our constituents. It doesn't have to be this way. So there are other states that approach these differently, and it does require a change in state law. South Carolina is a good example that states that when an AG is acting on behalf of the people of Minnesota broadly and not on behalf of an agency, agencies are not party to that litigation. That means that anything that the AG has, obviously, or information that they have gathered in pursuing the litigation may be presumptively brought in a discovery request, but it's not as a matter, the agencies aren't sucked into that as a matter of course. And so it limits the ability of corporate defendants to waste their time, taxpayer money, and really all they're doing is preserving their ability to make kids, frankly, in Meta's case, sicker and less safe. Under this bill, the Minnesota AG is a party and subject to discovery. It would not have to respond to requests as if, for example, the Department of Veteran Affairs had, that it had the same type of data in its possession as the department does. Now, it is important to know what this law doesn't do, because I think that's critical, especially based on, I think, some of the reviews of it. This doesn't change the character of any data in possession of our agencies. So if you look at the bill, it does not change anything with respect to the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act. If an agency has the information and somebody asks for it and it is public or not subject to some other shield, they have to turn it over. And it does not reference the Data Practices Act. In fact, the numbers 1 and 3 are only next to each other on line numbers. I checked. Additionally, it doesn't apply when an agency is the originator of litigation. If the Department of Veterans Affairs was a defendant, they would have to respond as if they were a party defendant. What this says is if the AG is initiating litigation on behalf of the people of Minnesota and you want to get information from MDE, you would serve a third-party subpoena, and then a judge would get to determine whether or not the scope and depth of the requests were reasonable. That is very common in litigation. That's why we have federal magistrates to go through that type of information request. And so this is, we hope, a common sense piece of legislation that will help our agencies do their jobs efficiently, not waste taxpayer resources. And we don't want our system to be gummed up when we are trying to keep, in this case, kids safe. So I would thank you for a yes vote. Brian, there are folks here who can answer specific questions if there are about the discovery requests in the Meta case, but otherwise I can talk discovery.
Thank you so much for that. Oh, thank you. Thank you for the clarification and the explanation on the bill. It did raise a question for me, but we have two individuals who have signed up to testify. If we could please have Chris McNulty, the General Counsel of MMB, come forward.
I think
Or is
Chris
he
is
just to
hanging-
answer questions?
Yep, Chris is in the chute, but doesn't need to testify.
Can I ask him to come forward? I do have a question, and I'm a little concerned as to why we're referring it to judiciary since it doesn't touch data practices.
Oh.
If you could please explain that to me, I would appreciate it. State your name for the record, and then you can answer my question.
Thank you, Chair Klevorn and members of the committee. My name is Chris McNulty. I am General Counsel for Minnesota Management and Budget. I believe, I'm not entirely sure, I guess. This law amends the Official Records Act, not the Data Practices Act.
Right.
So to be fully honest, I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
Madam Chair, my understanding is that the request for it to be referred to judiciary was not mandatory as a matter of course because of a data practices piece, but rather because it implicates discovery and court processes generally.
Awesome. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. Next, we have Roger Day. And Mr. Day, as you know, testimony has been limited to 2 minutes. So if you would, when you're ready, if you will state your name for the record and begin your testimony, please.
Thank you, Chair Klevorn. My name is Dr. Roger Day. I am a person with a profound disability. My disability is caused by lawyers and judges who have abused process to abuse me and to abuse the public. I've been crippled by lawyer fraud and judicial fraud. And the worst of the worst currently is Keith Ellison, the Attorney General. I've supplied you documents that show fraud on its face, where Keith Ellison's lawyers have made specious arguments to decision makers, and the decision makers have rubber stamped those arguments. You see a data practice case where Governor Walz dismisses the case, concluding that collateral estoppel bars the proceeding, and that there's a failure, and that the remedy sought is not available. In a data practice case, the remedy is correcting the data. That remedy is available. To say that that remedy is not available, to say that I'm seeking something other than correction of data in a data challenge is a bold-faced lie. Okay, so Keith Ellison presented fake justifications to the administration, and the administration adopted them. So we have a data practice fraud going on in Minnesota right now. It's been going on for 35 years. This is a 35-year data practice fraud. It is the biggest fraud in Minnesota today. It is costing us untold dollars and lives. The root fraud is a forensic medical investigation fraud. And so the state is being tricked into thinking that there is a public health and public safety problem that does not exist.
Thank you, Mr. Day. We appreciate your Thank you, Mr. Day. We appreciate your testimony.
Don't give the Attorney General more money to use indiscriminately.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to testify on this bill? All right, closing member discussion. Yes, Representative Bahner.
Thank you for that. I will just say, I think the example that you gave is an apt one, Representative Luger-Nikolai. I think it's probably no shocker in this committee that I do a great deal of work around online children's safety and have for some time. And the reality is that these companies have unlimited resources and unlimited lawyers to ask for frivolous things to slow down litigation and slow down justice for the people of Minnesota. And while we certainly want to make sure that we follow the letter of the law and we give all the needed resources to any litigants that come before the courts, these types of incidents do in fact cost taxpayers a great deal of money. They cost our agencies a great deal of time, and all in the vein of trying to obfuscate justice. And so I really appreciate this bill. I appreciate you bringing it forward, and I hope that we can move it on to the Judiciary Committee.
I have Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Luger-Nikolai, for the education on how this stuff works. Seems like a really common sense thing, so I'm supportive, and I'll ask for a roll call.
Okay, a roll call has been requested. Roll call will be granted. Do you have any comments? Representative Koznick.
Thank you. My question will be to House Fiscal. Being on this committee, I don't have the exact numbers, but I'm wondering if you could share with us, if you have it, otherwise you can get it offline, what the budgets have been for the Attorney General's office over the past 3 budget cycles, or maybe even just generally. It might be a little much to ask, but I think my point is that we've increased the funding for the Attorney General's office considerably. So I'm wondering if Ms. Roberts might be able to help us. And I understand I'm didn't give you a heads up on that, but if we know generally.
Representative Koznick, just for clarification, this is about the agencies having to produce data that, as opposed to the AG producing that data. But Ms. Roberts, do you have an answer?
Madam Chair, am I incorrect that the funding in this bill is not going to the Attorney General's office?
Representative Luger-Nikolai.
Madam Chair, Representative Koznick, I think we might be thinking about the next bill, and we can, that one, I think we'll probably get pulled and allay your concerns. This doesn't have a fiscal note, doesn't have a cost, and in fact, obviously, the hope is that it reduces cost to agencies because they spend a lot of man hours pulling the stuff together.
I think you're right. I'll withdraw my question for the next bill, but that was a concern that I have, so thanks.
Thank you so much, Representative Koznick. Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just curious about, are there any unintended consequences that could come from this? Because I do know there are a lot of different governmental entities that the AG is involved with cases and activity, and I can see where there could be valid reasons for discovery within that entity. So can you give us a little bit of idea as to when you looked at possible unintended consequences, how did you resolve that?
Representative Lugar-Nikolai.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Representative Quam, I appreciate the question. First answer is that one good thing about this going to judiciary is that we are actually going to have a couple additional conversations about it. As folks can see in the packet, there are some concerns from our friends looking at records availability. I don't think that it actually implicates those concerns because it doesn't change the character or scope of the Data Practices Act. An individual or a litigant can make a request under the DPA under the same terms of 3.04 now or after this bill passes. That life is not going to change in that regard. There are intended consequences with respect to instances in which agencies aren't part of the litigation or intended to be part of the litigation. We do want discovery to be limited or at least under the review of a judge or a magistrate if they're going to get giant discovery requests, document production, requests for production. I don't believe that there's an unintended consequence when an agency is a primary defendant. So I think if, and I hate to keep naming agencies because I think that probably makes people uncomfortable, but if a particular agency is either sued or has to sue to enforce the statutes for which that, that's their piece of the planet, they are a party to that litigation and they will be subject to discovery in exactly the same way after this litigation, if this bill passes. So I hope not.
Representative, may I give an example? Just a simple example. Okay, so let's say you own a convenience store and you participate in the lottery, which is an activity that is overseen by this committee, okay? And DHS is being sued. And so in that, without this clarification of the bill, the individual who owns that convenience store, let's say in my community of Plymouth, they would then potentially, all of their personal data as members who participate in the lottery could be swept into a massive investigation, even though it really has to do with Medicaid or Medicare. And this bill would protect my convenience store owner who participates in lottery from their data being swept. Is that correct?
That is correct, and that raises a good point. And that one piece of this is, practically speaking, when it is the case that someone receives when an agency receives a request like this, if it implicates non-public or even private data, and a judge approves that data being provided to the other side, it is usually going to be under a protective order. And a protective order is as good as the people who receive it or who agree to it as their own data protection behaviors are. So if in a situation where you've got complex litigation, reams of data are being provided around, yes, there's maybe going to be a protective order. That doesn't mean there won't be a data breach. That doesn't mean there isn't going to be a problem internally. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean somebody isn't going to mess something up on the other side of the litigation aisle. So it is important for us to be, I think, guarded about all the data that we maintain as a government and to whom it goes, and under what circumstances and whether or not it's truly important that that happen.
Representative Quam, did you have anything further? Okay. Anyone on our side? Okay. Chair Nash.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative Luger-Nikolai. For those that didn't hear, there are some testimony inserted into your packet from a group that we call Minkoji, and they have some concerns. I would really appreciate it if you would work with them on this, and that's why I'm going to ask our side to vote no. I want it to stay in committee so that you have a chance to work with them. They're a volunteer group, and we've worked with them on a number of things, both sides of the aisle, to get to where we can find a yes. So that would be my recommendation on this particular bill.
Okay.
Representative.
Madam Chair and Chair Nash, if it warms your heart on this at all, I did talk to Mr. Ellen yesterday. I did ask him if there was some language or some kind of comfort language we could add. I think I'm still hopeful I can sweet talk him out of his concerns, but I also am open to making modifications. And so if this is referred on, I do plan to keep having those conversations. It does not look like from your face it is warming your heart, but I'm just going to cope.
Chair Nash, do you have
Once again, I would prefer that we keep the bill here. Our side, I'm asking for a no vote, and just there's time that you can work with Minkoji. But so for today, we're just voting to keep it here in committee.
And members, a roll call has been requested, but I would like to remind the body that we did trust another member of our body. We let a bill leave our committee with the understanding that they would work on it before the next committee stop. And so we will take the roll.
Chair Klevorn?
Chair Klevorn votes aye.
Chair Klevorn votes aye. Representative Nash?
No.
Representative Nash, no. Representative Bahner?
Aye.
Representative Bahner, aye. Representative Davis?
No.
Representative Davis, no. Representative Anderson?
Anderson, no.
Anderson, no. Representative Clardy?
Clardy, aye.
Representative Clardy, aye. Representative Freiberg?
Yes.
Representative Freiberg, aye. Representative Jones?
Aye.
Oh. Representative Jones, aye. Representative Joy?
No, please.
Representative Joy, no. Representative Koznick?
No, thank you.
Representative Koznick, no. Representative Kraft?
Aye.
Representative Kraft, aye. Representative Nikolai?
Aye.
Representative Nikolai, aye. Representative Quam? Representative Quam, no. Representative Sexton?
No.
No. Chair, there are 7 ayes, 7 nays, and 0 excuse.
Thank you. And with a vote of 7 ayes, 7 nays, the motion does not prevail and the bill is laid over. Next, we move on to House File 4060. Representative Luger-Nikolai, would you like to just introduce the bill and then I'll have a few comments.
Okay. Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to present HF 4060. This bill does create an allocation for the Attorney General's office. We will be pulling this bill, Representative Koznick, so we're not going to be even, I don't believe, asking for a vote on it. And so that we can continue to have some conversations with the AG's office, even though it's a short bill. There's no bad ideas in a brainstorm. So that I would support additional resources to the Attorney General's office, especially because we are seeing a great deal of brain drain from the U.S. Attorney's office. There is a significant identity often of the types of litigation, especially in terms of pursuing criminal defendants who violated statutes that are both federal crimes and state crimes. I think we have an opportunity here to actually pick up on some really great attorneys, and I would love to see some funding to the AG's office to do that.
Chair Nash, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make sure we're not moving the bill forward today. We're going to.
That's correct. We're going to pull it from today.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Luger-Nikolai. Oh, yes, we are pulling the bill. Do you have a comment?
Well, so do you not want any discussion on it generally then? We're just going to pull it?
We're pulling it for today.
But she
So
did
we can
introduce
have
it.
comment at a future time when if we bring the bill back.
Fair enough, thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, Representative Quam, thank you for waving at me.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And in the interim between possibly bringing this up again, I'd like to see what the budgets have been during those years, how much has been spent on outside attorneys, and how many times has he not represented local governments when local governments have followed the state law, and he's not stood there to protect and fight for the state law so that local governments had to incur the cost, legal costs, by going themselves.
Representative Luger-Nikolai, this is a conversation that I think the two of you are best to have because that's a confused.
Madam Chair, the whole committee should have this information. Therefore, I'm asking for it now so that when it's procured, it can be distributed.
So
then.
If the bill were to come forward, please go ahead.
Madam Chair and Representative Quam, I don't have any, I think it would be nice if you and I could just chat so I could sort of have the parameters of the question, because I think I understand, but I want to double check.
And then if this bill comes forward again, we would all appreciate the information.
Yeah, you betcha.
Thank you very much. And with that, members, I believe our business for today is concluded. Our next meeting will be on Tuesday, March 17th. And with that, members, we are adjourned.